So we'll get started out. We'll look at the new enhancements that I added into GP 2015. Now, I understand a lot of the group that's in here may have just switched over to 2013 or may still be sitting on GP 2010. So with that in mind, I also have a whole host of topics I'll be covering that were also in the enhancement for GP 2013, just so you get an idea of if you're making that double leap from 2010 to 2013 to 2015, some of the things you can look for and the interactions that you're going to have. The interface changes and such between 2013 and 2015 have not changed significantly enough to warrant a second session or anything like that. So you'll kind of be on par if we navigate around GP 2015, but also speak of the GP 2013 features that were out there. So I'm going to get started. And everybody seeing the screen right now?
Yes.
Perfect. So, depending on your current version of GP, things may look a little bit different just navigationally and presentation-wise on your home page. So just kind of get that idea of what we'll be looking at as we go along and how that looks. Now, a couple of topics that I wanted to mention that are a big push for Microsoft in GP 2015 that don't necessarily affect the end user, up front, but it can affect the overall experience on the back end and some of the pushes that you can make. So GP 2013 R2 made a major push into using the web client version of GP, and GP 2015 follows along with that. And one of the pieces that you gain with that now is instead of having to have two separate logins, okay, I've logged into Windows, now I've logged into GP. If you choose in your upgrade to go with a full web client for users, in the user setup window, those users now gain the ability to have their name linked. So if we look at my Sean user out here, their user can be linked to a Windows account directory. And then during the login sequence for the web client, it will actually trigger and flag and automatically pick up their username based off of their Windows user. So you can get that Active Directory login experience versus them having to remember both a Windows user and a GP user ID. Most of the time they're similar, but it's just one of those ease of access things they've added there. So they're adding a lot more identity management to this, and they're taking it further steps as they move down the road of, okay, now we're getting into the realm where Windows accounts can be used. Can we also take that and transfer it over to things like Office 365 and integrate more with your Windows Live ID and such? So there's a lot more functionality that they're planning to add with that, but logging into the web client, you can have that user's Active Directory automatically fill in for them so that they don't have to have a SQL login at the time of logging in also. Another piece that you'll see on the back end that doesn't necessarily affect, like I said, the end user, but is more of an architectural type thing that has been added to the system is now GP 2015 is making a major push for what's called service-based architecture. And just from a high level understanding of what that kind of adds to the mix, I'll pull up kind of the idea here of what it does and how it functions just in a presentation that I did in December 2014, but the same concept is there. Service-based architecture is going to give individuals the ability from a development standpoint, but also moving forward, further development, ease of access, ability to surface specific functions and such from Dynamics GP in applications and mobile apps and a lot of different pieces of information. So there's going to be a lot more flexibility, and you're going to kind of see GP molding and shaping and going further into, companion mobile market applications on the mobile side and things of that sort. So it's really branching out further from what you would necessarily expect it to be. It's a lot more flexible than the Dexterity, if you've ever heard that name thrown around, or even getting into some of the VB.net. So there's a lot more push that developers, consultants, and even your internal development teams can make a push and flexibility given with that service-based architecture. So you'll hear that if you go out and you do any searches on GP 2015, service-based architecture will be one of those topics that comes up. There's a lot more depth that you can get into with it just to get a general understanding of where it stands. Another nice piece of functionality that they've added to the user setup, getting back into that realm, is that as you're setting up new users in the system, and let's say that I created a new guy out here, and let's just create somebody at this point. So let's get in, and we'll just, we're going to set up Bob here. Okay, so Bob's a new user, Bob Jones. And as we're setting up Bob, okay, you know what? Bob really works well and really fits the same bill that Sean does in the system. So in previous versions, you've always had the ability to copy some of the security settings and such, but they've kind of taken it a step further. Valid registration keys. Let's hop into. So they've added an additional functionality to not only can you still copy the security access for that user, so copy from a user, but now you can also take homepage content, area pages, and copy it to that user. So if you have one person that's really doctored up their quick links, their reminders, their reports, all of that different information on their homepage that makes their lives easier, and you want to take that same functionality and add it to this new user because maybe they're standing side by side with this person learning the ropes from that individual, and you want to give them that same interaction, that works exceptionally well, where you could come in and say, okay, this user fits and matches, and all of these users, I'm going to copy the security from him, but the homepage role, Mike, really fits for the homepage content. And you can copy that, and then that user will actually grab all of the homepage settings from that user. Was there a question?
Yeah, I did, but not everybody, this administrator doesn't pertain to everybody, correct?
Correct.
Because
so
not everybody
yeah, the thing you have to keep in mind is that whenever you're copying it, it's not copying, unless you chose to copy the security from that specific individual, the homepage information down here is only copying the settings from that specific user. So your security is still going to be in place at that point. So it may add elements from that security, from that power user onto their homepage, but unless they have security access to access that specific window, they're still not going to be able to do it. So it still takes in all your security settings.
If Nancy decides that she wants to give me whatever she does or copy, she can copy her stuff without she could give it to me.
Correct. She could give it to you, and it would not affect it. It's still based on all your security and everything along those lines. So yeah, if you look at her desktop and you go, oh, there's a lot of stuff there that I really like, and how did you do that? How did you do that? In GP 2015, she could say, here, I'll just give it all to you, and you don't have to worry about it. Or I can show you if you want to add new things at that point, but you could copy it all in one fell swoop. So that just makes some ease of access and user setup, just, helps out your ability to set up new users in the system quickly and easily, especially if there's a lot of users that you have to configure at one time, or you have a lot of in and out, or even new people that are being set up for other roles. And that can be done at any point. So if you've got one user that's had a very thin homepage experience and you have another user that's really doctored up.
I'm listening to a webinar.
Is it important?
No. What do you think?
So next area to talk about is with GP 2015. Yeah, go ahead.
They said we can have steel. I asked them what kind of weight design you want, how close does it need to be to what you're picturing here, because there's really not any dimensions on it. And at the end of the conversation, he just said make it full round. How do we document?
If I can ask you to mute your line while you're sitting in the presentation, if you don't mind.
For a variance. Let me.
Now, can I, whenever I quote it, can I put on there the variance of the print is the weight design is a full round?
That might be the best thing to do. And then once
There we go. All right. So, I'm sorry, go ahead and say the question one more time. All right. So let's continue on. So the next part that they've done in GP 2015 is they've added integration points for Management Reporter and some of the activity that you get with Management Reporter and the interactions that you get. So if we go in and we look underneath GP in the administration and the setup area, as we're going through and we're setting up our company information and we get into the options, there's an option in here for if you have analytical accounting or general ledger, of course, general ledger turned on, do you want it to build both records within your management reports? And now, so this functionality was out there before. Of course, you could include general ledger and AA in your reports, but now it is by company. So you have multiple companies set up in the system. You can pick and choose what type of information you want to show by company instead of it being each company shows everything out there no matter what based off of the setting from one company to the other. So there's that functionality now added to the company setup out there to be able to enable general ledger reporting. And of course, if you have analytical accounting turned on, you could enable that also and capture both or one or the other. The other piece that they've added is the ability to add in links for Management Reporter on navigation panes. So they've been further developing this as we go. So you've seen maybe this window as you've gotten into GP 2010, GP 2013 adds in a little bit more. GP 2015 adds in the Management Reporter tab, where now you can point to your Management Reporter service and the Report Designer executable and deploy those reports. And the experience that you get at that point is that those reports then show up on your home page, on your navigation page on the left-hand side. So as we go through and we set those up, you'll end up with management reports showing up on your left-hand side to be able to navigate to and choose and work with at that point. So as you add those, this is kind of the look and feel that you would get. Of course, I'm on a client version, so I can't install a standalone, but once they're added, any of your management reports that are set up out there then show up underneath a new option, just as we see on the navigation page, Management Reporter reports, and then you can access and gain access to those specific management reports directly from within GP instead of having to navigate out or set up a quick link or something along those lines. So that's kind of the experience that you'll get, just similar to what we have for the Smartlist favorites and the other reports and such. You would double click, it pops open the report viewer, and you're on your way. Another major push that they've been making with GP 2015 and of course GP 2013 R2, if you've seen that version, is the push for bringing the workflow functionality that normally sat out in SharePoint into GP itself. So in GP 2013 R2, you saw a push where they were adding in purchasing and requisitioning and timesheet submittance and project expense and things of that sort. GP 2015 brings the entire functionality of the workflow underneath the actual application itself versus having to run it in SharePoint. So if we go out and we look underneath administration and we scroll down, there's a new section for workflow maintenance. And in here, you have all your different workflows that you could potentially set up and configure in the system for financial general batch approval, receivables batch, purchasing, where you get payables batch, purchase order approval, requisition approval, or vendor approval. You also get some payroll things for employee profile, W-4, time cards, and then on the project side, the expense report and timesheet approval. And the way that these function is you set these up, and it basically, whenever a document is wanted to be presented and sent, let's say in the example of a purchase order, before a purchase order could be sent to the vendor for them to look at. So printed out, emailed, whatever it may be, that specific purchase order would need to be submitted into the workflow and approved or filled out further by individuals in the organization before it can go through. Benefits of that is that it can be a hands-off experience for the individuals that are approving. So it can send out an email to an individual. They can interact with that email at that time, say approve, decline, delegate, and push that around. Or, you know, of course, the individual gets workflow notifications and such within GP where they can approve and move things through. And those workflows can be configured and set up on a multitude of different criteria, you know, where a field isn't filled out for this specific vendor, this specific user, dollar amount thresholds, all sorts of different pieces of information can be built into those workflows. So it's a giant step in the right direction to allow you workflow elements within GP for being able to approve certain areas. And you can pick and choose where you want to activate it. You may not find any value in creating it for a purchase order, but you may find value in payables batch or even just general ledger batch approvals. And that's just to take it a step further. Even if you're doing the batch approval setting right now from the posting setup, you may want a few additional steps before a general ledger batch is posted to the system, other than just one person going in and putting in the password to approve it. So you may find a lot of additional functionality and additional areas that you want to branch out on. R2 is introducing, I know this was something that they've asked for, that users have asked for a long time, that were in the workflow. They are going to add the payables transactions to the list also. So not just on the batch level, but also payables transactions. So just kind of keep that in mind, that they're going to, now that it's underneath the Dynamics GP application umbrella, they're going to continue to develop this further now and take it further steps. That I think they end up with a lot more control over having it underneath the application also. So Intercompany has been taken a notch up, and I don't, of course, with Fabricam and the 2 database, I don't have a lot of good attributes to show within my demo environment, but I did want to show you some of the Intercompany pieces that we gain with the GP edition out there. So Intercompany, if you're actively using that in your system, it just adds some additional functionality for being able to see where something resided from in Intercompany. So they've added in some additional windows and additional functionality to drill in and see intercompany transactions within the system. So there's a lot of additional pieces that they've added to it to make it where now when you drill into a financial transaction, you gain some additional visibility. So you pull into a journal entry that was entered as an intercompany transaction. Bottom left-hand corner, you'll end up with the button for intercompany. And then clicking on that actually pulls open the intercompany journal entry window, showing you the destination company and the accounts that went along with it. So just some additional information that they've added along the way. Voiding an intercompany transaction in the originating company will also void that transaction on the destination company. So they also added in that piece too, where now you have both companies talking to one another for those intercompany transactions. So when you void one intercompany transaction, it will also follow through to the other database and void it over there also. So some good pieces of functionality that they've added there if you're an avid user of intercompany functionality. Another piece that they've added in, just working down the line here, so in Payables, if you've ever ran into an issue where somebody forgot to enter in a PO invoice, so you're actively using the 3-way match purchase order to receipt to a PO invoice, and you had a user that accidentally entered that PO invoice as a payables transaction instead of marking it and matching it up to the purchase order and the purchase receipt, there's now a new addition within the system to warn if a vendor has existing purchase orders. And what that'll do is during entry, if there's any type of purchase orders that exist for that vendor before saving or posting, it will pop up and say, hey, this vendor does have open purchase orders. Are you sure that you want to handle this transaction this way? So it's just one of those pieces where now it'll at least give a warning and let somebody know that, hey, by the way, you might want to take a look at the actual, at the vendor record before processing this through. And that's just a nice warning itself, just like I said, to make sure that there's no issues with individuals accidentally entering into the wrong part of the system. So cool thing is that whenever it pops that message, says the vendor has existing purchase order, continue to post or save. If you click that go to button, on that functionality, it will actually jump you to a list of the purchase orders, the navigation list for that vendor for POs, where then you could drill in and, oh, that's where I needed to be. I needed to be on this purchase order to invoice it. So some nice functionality there, just warning and helping users along the way for where there's been, problems in the past. Fixed assets has had an additional report added to it. So now at the end of the year, you can print out a fixed asset year-end closing report, which goes through and shows you, it's an optional report. At the time, it shows assets categorized by the asset book, and they are listed by their asset IDs. It lists the current fiscal year for the asset book and any adjustments that were made during the process of closing the year. So it's just giving you visibility of those assets as they sit out there, accumulated depreciation, all of that information during the year and having to do something yourself. So if you are actively using the fixed asset module in GP, this report is an optional report that can be generated at the time of a year-end close. Another piece, and a big push that they've been making since GP 2010, if you've adopted the process, great. If you haven't gotten to that yet, emailing documents has been a major player in the system since GP 2010, and they continue to grow upon that as they go. The piece that they've added in now is the ability that after a document has been posted to the system, there was no way to go back and manipulate or update or change the email that was sent. So if you accidentally emailed it to the wrong department, wrong user, didn't have the correct email address on there, and it bounced back, and that invoice got posted through, you had to do a little bit of work your end. You'd have to reprint the historical invoice and then manually email it or something along those lines. The downside of that is that you don't gain the history that you gain within GP by emailing through the system itself. So what they added is if I go in and I just hit history in the system, and let's just pull up, of course, everybody's favorite Fabricam customer here, just because he's at the top of the list. If I pull that up in sales document inquiry, and I look out here, okay, I could email this at this point. But the function that they've added within here is the edit email at the top. So now I've got it pulled up. I emailed it to myself, of course. But if I needed to send it somewhere else or additional information, I can hit edit email at the top. And this gives me the functionality to then change that email address and resend it to somebody else. Or maybe I needed to CC somebody else and run it down the line there. So I have the ability to come in and modify those email addresses after the fact, after a document's been posted to the system. Let's take a quick second here. Any questions or anything on what I've kind of gone through up to this point? Any further developments working through any of the details? Just wanted to make sure I paused for a second.
Can you tell us, does that re-emailing function, does that also work on the, like if you're emailing payables remittances?
Yes, it does. And that's one of the pieces that they've added out here is the ability to rebuild a payables remittance. That's actually in a GP 2013 enhancement that they put out here. So let me pull up transaction by vendor real quick. And I created one of these yesterday. And let me find my example. So one of the pieces that they've added in GP 2013 R2 is the ability to recreate the check stub within the system. So there's the ability to do that, but you can also hit the email at the top. And I'll have to double check my Fabricam vendor here and make sure that I've got the correct one. Let it figure out what it's doing for the email here. We'll see if it comes through mine. If it doesn't come through mine, then we're going to hop into that little email icon here. But yeah, they've added the ability to resend previously emailed documents all over the place. So yeah, through here I can come in and say, okay, payables payment Zoom. If I click on that icon, it pulls open the window and same interaction that I had before. I can say, okay, I forgot to email you this. Send the document, and then I can hit email and send that off. There's no exceptions, and let me pull up my Outlook for as these things start to roll through, I can pull them up as examples for you, because I'm getting all sorts of emails coming through on my phone now. There we go. So then there's the historical look at the remittance form coming back out via email after it was sent. Of course, mine comes up as a kind of an ugly view. And I don't have it doctored up very pretty or anything, but that's essentially the check remittance form that can get sent out. If you've looked at the Word templates and everything, there's a lot of functionality for designing these and making them prettier. So resending those, editing both payables side, purchase order, and sales information for being able to resend an email after the fact. So same thing for purchase order if you needed to resend that information also. So another huge push that they made for GP 2015, and I assume that I haven't heard an awful lot since my time at Turnkey on, it doesn't handle the specific payment terms that we were looking for. I think I've ran into it a couple of times, and with a little bit of work, we were able to make something pretty closely resemble what was out there before. That, at this point, should hopefully not be an issue going forward. They have taken the payment terms to the next level now in GP 2015, where you have the ability to say, specific day, essentially, or end of year or year later or something like that. So year later, no payments until 2016, whatever you want to say. So you come in, calculate days from transaction date, add days, 365 net days, or you could have it be annual, add years for the due date. So you could just have it add days from there, from the transaction date, or you could have it based off of adding specific years for that date. What does that look like? So if I set it up just in this specific function, no discount or anything, but I wanted to calculate that. Okay, so if my transaction date is today, my discount date is 2018, my due date isn't until 2019. I'm going to make no money. But there is that function now to be able to handle those types of situations where now you can do, a specific month and day, number of months, next month, of course, none. Got a lot of different calculations. I think the handiest piece of this is that there's a lot of functionality you can do here, but my same question is, okay, what did I just do to my system? And that calculate button up at the top allows you to kind of figure out and say, okay, if I did those terms today, this is when that user is going to be paying. So you've got that functionality out there now to be able to calculate, maybe have more incentives in your payment terms and things like that. If you're looking to be able to handle promotional type payment terms to, entice individuals to come in and buy and, purchase from you and things of that sort, this gives that flexibility out there. I always thought as soon as they showed it off, my first thought was, all the car dealerships or, big box stores saying, buy now, no payments until 2017. So this fulfills that need within GP to handle that functionality. And then the last one I'm going to show, if your company has not elected to go with Smartlist Builder yet, you haven't taken that next step and purchased the E1 product for Smartlist Builder, you may have seen this trickle through from GP 2013. They've added the ability now within Smartlist. My window is so wide here. To create new smart lists within the application itself. So you don't have to have Smartlist Builder now to create new smart lists. It's not as robust, of course, as Smartlist Builder, and some of the features that are out there with Smartlist Builder aren't within this yet, but it's taking the steps in the right direction. The biggest push on this is the fact that now with GP 2015, they've added the functionality to be able to publish these reports to Excel. So if we were to create a new smart list out here using Smartlist Designer off of something, and I'm going to choose a random table just because we're not going to take too much time here to work through. But let's just kind of run through this and see what do we got. What a wonderful table that we can't really get. SOP and POP link. So if you've got any type of sales orders to purchase orders that you're creating in the system, this is a good way to look at it. Let's just see if we get any records. Yeah, bad table to choose. Let's do sales user defined work history. There we go. That's a little bit better. So let's say that we created a new smart list out here and we called it SOP user defined. Okay, I'm going to put that in the sales because it makes sense. So just quickly and easily, I get a list of all the tables that are out there to choose from, and I can add those to the list. You can also add system views. So if you've got anybody who's good at coding in your company, they could write a SQL view and then you could access it within here. So it's a lot of different magic you can do with the Smartlist Designer. But the biggest function that they've added to 2015 is that now once there's a new smart list added here, you have the ability with a lot of those different smart lists to then publish them to the Excel reports. So we've got this version that we're running, but now I want to take this and I want to publish it to my Excel reports. And where that publishes it, that if I go out and I look underneath sales and I look at Excel reports, it's taken that, and if you've dove into these Excel reports yet, great. If you haven't gotten into them, I strongly suggest making sure that you can get into the Excel reports in the system and work with them, because essentially every single GP smart list that you see in the system is recreated as a Excel report. That, with a little bit of security configuration, becomes a refreshable version of the report that you could pivot table off of and use just the functions of Excel. Best example for that is anytime you're running a smart list and letting it run in its entirety and then hitting the export to Excel function thereafter, that's an example that I would come up with that this is a perfect time to start adopting and looking at the Excel reports that exist in the system. And a whole host of those were added in GP 2013, and they'll continue to build upon that. And now, of course, if you do not have Smartlist Builder, Smartlist Designer now gives you the capability to add new Excel reports to your list. And the benefit of these, and if I just pull this up and let you see the way that it pulled up on my screen, whenever it displays on mine, this is kind of the interaction that I get. And all I have to do is hit Enable Content up at the top, and it pulls up, and everything that was in that smart list now are within my report that I'm looking at here. So I've got a tracking number list out there that gives me the tracking numbers by sales transactions in the system. So if there's anything that has a tracking number, it shows up. Nice thing is that this report, if you've used these, has the ability to do a data refresh. So I can hit that refresh up at the top, and it'll rerun this query that it's built on to say, hey, go out, grab that data, and add it back in. Add any new data that applies.
You don't have to rebuild every time. Wonderful.
And the cool thing about this is, let's say that we wanted to do something a little fancier with that, just to give you kind of an idea. If we wanted to take this table and do, some sort of fancy pivot table, nice thing is that this pivot table is refreshed based up on the data in the other sheet. So if I hit refresh all and any of those values in the other one change, so do my pivot tables. So you get a lot of functionality. You'll see dashboards added to that. If you've chosen to both upgrade GP to 2015 and your Excel to 2013, I strongly suggest it, because there are a lot of functions within Excel 2013, the newest version, that complement the Excel reports in GP. such as timelines and pivots and all those different things that you can do with it. So that is a list of all of the 2015 specific features that they've added. There's a few others out there, such as the service-based architecture that you could get into. Looking at the web client is definitely something to explore also, just to give you kind of a glimpse of what that interaction looks like. The web client is essentially an emulation of exactly the same thing that you get in the client version of GP, just in the web. So a user could pull up GP and access it, and this is kind of the look and feel that you get. Same navigational elements on the left-hand side, same window elements on it, but this is all pulled up in Internet Explorer, Chrome, Firefox. Those are your different interactions. So taking that look, that may open up new doors for you from a deployment standpoint, instead of having to worry about client installs or terminal server. Now you have everybody hitting GP within a web browser, and that's the only point that you have to worry about. Upgrades, things like that, they're all extremely flexible because now you've got one point of upgrade or enhancement or customization versus having to deploy packages to everybody in the company. And with 2015, if you're using either one of these pieces of functionality, those were the most recent updates that they added into the web client, is the Canadian payroll and invoice entry if you're using that from a sales standpoint. So questions on any of the specific GP functionality that's out there? I know you saw the homepage and there's some different bells and whistles that you see on the homepage here. These are all actually here within 2013 R2. And that's kind of what I'm going to branch into now, is just making sure that everybody's up to speed from 2010 to 2013 R2 also.
But we missed this. There were a lot of changes, I think, between this and this. Oh,
And we didn't,
we missed that. Yeah,
we're going to 2015.
Yeah, so we missed this stuff.
So the next area to kind of talk about, some of the highlights that I wanted to make sure are mentioned from a GP 2013 R2 standpoint, if you've ever run into issues where, okay, we're at the end of a year, we're trying to get everything we need done, and we need to make sure that there are no users accessing the system at the time that we're in doing our year-end updates, closes, whatever in the world we need to. And no matter what, there's always somebody that happens to jump in and lock up a transaction or something like that. If it's ever happened to you, you've probably fixed it internally as best as you can. They've taken it the next step, GP 2013 on, underneath administration. There's a new function underneath the utilities for take company offline. And within here, you can choose from your list of companies and then insert that company. And what it'll do is it locks that company so that users cannot log into that company unless they are given the specific access. And what it guarantees you, once you take a company offline, you can give it a message that says, hey, company's offline for maintenance, we're doing something, stay out of the system. And then what it'll do is that as you configure that and set it up in your company setup, so if I scroll down underneath setup, hit company, underneath the company setup, there is a user with offline access. So the SA user can jump into the system, there's no issue there. But if you need to give a specific user that has year-end tasks, customization tasks, testing tasks, whatever it may be, you can choose from your list of users, and it will grant that specific one user access to the system while they do whatever it is that they need to. So it gives you complete control over, okay, I'm locking down the system and making sure that nobody jumps in at this time except for the person that needs to. That's kind of a nice step in the right direction, that, you know, now you can lock the system up, take the company offline for any of your year-end, month-end activities that you need to make sure that people are not processing transactions, posting, whatever, while you get everything lined up for the next month or the next year. Next big piece that they've added to the system, if you've seen it or heard of it, is document attachments. So in GP 2013 R2, they added in the functionality for putting in document attachments for any of the documents that you enter in the system, whether it be, you know, a purchase order, a payables document, a vendor, a customer, an item. they've added it onto a multitude of the windows in the system for being able to do document attachments. Basically anywhere that you can think of that you could add an attachment in the note window, it's been replaced by the document attachment functionality. If you've been an avid user of the document attaching documents through the notes originally, through the OLE container up to this point, there is a utility that you can download from Customer Source that allows you to convert your current attachments to the new document attachment window. There's a lot more functionality within this, and let me show you that. So as we get in and we look at a customer, same interaction most of the places. You're going to see at the top of the bar, and if this is your first time seeing this in the navigation, they have gone with kind of the Windows, the Office 2007 Beyond navigation now within the system. I will show you the option to be able to turn that on and off here in just a moment if you do not like that look and feel. But up at the top, essentially on every window, you'll see the little paperclip, similar to what we saw within the attach windows. From there, you could click on Attach, and it brings you into the window. If you do have a Windows image acquisition compatible scanner, scan button automatically is down here at the bottom right, and you can scan directly from your scanner into GP and it'll attach that document. It is encapsulating each one of these documents, so it is saving it to the database itself. It's not saving it to a directory or anything like that. It is putting it within Dynamics GP. So once you do, and once you decide on specific entry for it, you can hit Attach. If you saw in my window, I had it going out to a specific directory if I wanted to do an attachment, or I can choose from a different directory on the network for it to pull up. And from there, let's just go out and find something fun here. Let's see, what do we got under TTI marketing? How about, a Dynamics logo for this customer. Dynamics 2014. Not sure what it looks like, but we'll throw it in there. So you can add it in, and now that document is added to the customer. You can preview that, and it'll open up the appropriate window viewer, so PDF, movies, JPEGs, anything that you can imagine you want to attach to it. You get the ability to track status. So here's where it was attached, here's where somebody viewed it, here's where somebody deleted it. So you kind of get this whole list of history for that attachment. So if you've got constantly are updating MSAs or other types of customer level, vendor level, item level documents, schematics, whatever it may be, you get kind of that history tracking for when something's been modified or updated. You also can choose additional things, attachment properties to the right. Can you send that document and send that attachment in an email? And whenever a transaction is entered for this customer, or if it's an item, or if it's a vendor, will that attachment flow to the transaction? So will it automatically attach that document then to the transaction that's being entered? So if it's some sort of document that needs to be sent along in the email to the customer, so you're sending them the invoice, but it also needs to send them a terms and conditions or something like that, then we can have it immediately flow through. These attributes that you see right there, those are user-defined, so if there was some specific attribute that you could think of that went along with it, we could do that and then type in a description to go along with it. So those are all user-defined. And then that just shows now, okay, it allows me to send it in an email, checked. It allows me to, it'll flow through, checked. And you can add in additional descriptions. So good push in the right direction for kind of an internal document management. It's a thin interaction, but it does add in, I think, some of the better, better functionality that you get out of a small document attachment functionality. So it was a good push in the right direction there for the document attachments. They have talked about in the future enhancements, the last show that I was at, that the document attachments will actually work into the workflow at some point. So as documents are attached, the option and the addition of those document attachments to flow with the emails that go out for workflow notifications is on the planned horizon. So email functionality, we've seen, being able to set up the email in the system. If you haven't seen that up to this point, they've just added in some new functionality for the emailing from the system. So you get that ability now to set up your email, define that you want it to embed in the message body if you want to go for an HTML interaction. You've got some additional things out here. One of the bigger pieces that they put in for the email functionality at this point is the ability to password lock your Word docs. So if you found that PDFs don't always get through, HTML, any of the other formats just don't work, and you need to send things as docx to specific customers, there's a password protect that you can put on there so they don't doctor it up and make it look pretty on their end for pricing and such, and then say, well, this is what I got. And then the ability to then enable those specific documents on the sales side. Navigationally, your homepage, of course, has changed a little bit. So the ability to add in specific areas out here. One of the big pushes that they added into GP 2013 R2 is requisitions are now available in GP. If you're familiar with a requisition, or if you're not familiar with a requisition is kind of a preliminary purchase order. Think of it in those regards. You have individuals that are not in line with vendor purchasing policies, your company's purchasing policies. They're really just an individual that knows that they need something and they need to tell somebody that they need something. So a requisition works exceptionally well because you can have users get in, enter in a very thin amount of information, and place a purchase requisition at that point. So they've added in the window on here. I need to enter a purchase requisition, and it just jumps them immediately into that window. If there's requisitions that are out here that are currently in the list or ready for purchase or anything like that that I have in my queue, I've just got a nice little window pane to be able to look at that. Procurement is being added as an application too for mobile devices. So users on the road will now be able to, with configuration, set up and enter in requisitions while they're on the road. And that's one of the included functionality within the light user, so the lower cost user entry. And I think, I want to say self-service gets it too, but somebody can verify on that one. So then you also get the time management, the project time and expense. User can log into their homepage and immediately enter their timesheet from the homepage, enter in an expense report, do time cards. So there's a lot of different information and stuff that they've added in from kind of the payroll project employee interaction within the system. More of the self-service push that they've made. So there's a lot of those pieces out here. One of the bigger pieces that they've added in, if you've seen it up to this point, is as you navigate to other panes, if you're a limited user or a user that doesn't normally work with utilities or routines or setup or anything, you still see those windows out here. They just are blank a lot of the time. So if they're bugging you, they're not something that you actually want to see on your window. You want it to go away. All of the area pages now gain access to the customize this page where you could just turn those off so you don't see them. So if you didn't want to see that navigationally whenever you get into that window, you can just drop them off. You can still get to them through other navigation and such if you need to, but they're just kind of out of sight, out of mind at that point.
I have a question.
Sure.
On the home page, under like my reports,
Yep.
Can you alphabetize that with this new system?
Not through the actual window right here. Those still go in the order that they were entered. But your My Reports section is actually a report list. So, Diane, if you hopped in underneath, or I'm sorry, Nancy, if you hop in underneath My Reports and you hover over that, there's the little pencil on there, and it'll pull up the My Reports page. Here you can actually sort by the reports alphabetically and double click on them and do whatever you need to with them.
Okay, and then it'll appear that way on your home page.
Yeah, and kind of the nice thing about this window, different than other navigation lists and everything, it's a flyout window, which means that it pops up and it doesn't monopolize your home page or anything. You can minimize that and bring it up anytime you want to get to your reports.
All right, thanks.
You're welcome. The one piece I wanted to show you also is you've seen the new navigation on the windows. That's your first introduction to the new area page up here at the top. That's now, on every single window navigation in the system. I have gotten accustomed to it, and I like it now. Other people may have issues with it, or may want to still work with the old version and slowly move into that playground. Underneath user preferences, you can turn off and go back to the original menu bar interaction if you want. So you don't always have to work with the new one as soon as you jump out of the box. You could work with one of the other specific ones out here if you wanted to. So menu bar takes you back to the original GP 2010. Action pane strip basically minimizes that down, makes it a very thin experience. The action pane is the full-blown view that you're seeing right now. So from a deployment standpoint, just an honorable mention, there is now the ability to name your system databases, which the benefit of that from a deployment standpoint is the fact that now you can deploy multiple instances of GP on a single instance of SQL. So you don't have to worry about creating another instance every single time. You can go through and create a Dynamics database 1, 2, 3, 4 on the same SQL Server instance. So you don't have to have multiple instances out there for it. So just a little tidbit of information from an installation standpoint. So you don't have to create so many different SQL servers running at one time. Cuts down on the amount of resources that you have to run on that specific server. Another function added to GP 2013 on is the ability to pick and choose your lookups and the default sort order. Anybody love the fact that whenever you get into customer IDs, it automatically defaults to customer ID and there's no way to change that off of something else? Now in the versions, you can change the sorting lookup for items, employees, customers/prospects, salespersons, and vendors per user per company. So if I wanted it to always be defaulted to find by customer, I can select that column, hit the drop down, and set that as the default view. The next time I get into that window, it is defaulted to that lookup. And all I have to do is type in that customer's name to jump to it. So keep that in mind. They've added that functionality in to make your life a little bit easier. So let's see, other honorable mentions from a financial standpoint. Exciting thing that they've added to the system now. From a financial standpoint, if you've seen it, if you haven't seen it, let's introduce you, is the copy and paste functionality from Excel. So let's just grab my example here. So I've got a very simple Excel spreadsheet filled out. I've got the description, which is my distribution reference, my account number, debit, and credit. This is the exact layout you would use for the copy and paste functionality. I fill this out to my heart's extent with my debits and credits in its entirety, select those columns, Control-C or copy them. So grab them, copy, get the little running ants around the outside, come into GP, make sure I'm in my field down there, hit paste, and voila. It has copy and pasted from Excel to add that information in. Whatever I had in the distribution reference, in the description of that, has filled into my distribution reference, and it's just increased the speed of entry from a standpoint of the manual transactions that you have to enter into the system. If there was something missing in that import file, so let's just go back and I'll snag that example one more time, and let's say that I accidentally forgot my GL number. So I've snagged that and I forgot my GL number. So I forgot my GL number at that point, so then I can pull up and say, all right, take that, copy, and I come in down at the bottom, I hit paste. It's going to pop this window and say, hey, you forgot to enter in an account for this one. So we'll tell you if something's missing along the way.
Mm-hmm.
So that'll speed up your entry at the time of working through the transaction.
Do you know if that is as particular about how the data is formatted? For example, if you had that formatted as currency rather than general, would it have an issue with pasting that in?
I don't think that it does. We'll give it a whirl real quick. Let's just format the cell, and we'll just set everything to time. Who knows what it's going to think at that point. Let's see if it'll have an issue with us. Well, it thinks it's 12 o'clock. So for text, let's do format cells. Let's throw that back as text. It was as general there, so we'll go back, we'll copy that again, and kind of the same functionality there. So I think it's just going to pick up whatever values it finds within it. So it doesn't necessarily care what's within it, so long as it can find the actual text value of that field within there. So it's not going to care if it's currency or text or general at that point. My example out here actually is, I think it was general for the D column, and now it's text for the C column. So it will fill it out appropriately for you as you go. So we got about 4 minutes left of the session. Any specific questions that I can answer for you today, things that we can circle back to, or any interests, follow-ups that you would like to have on the session? Hopefully it was informative enough to kind of give you an idea of where we sit with GP 2015 and then some of the highlights from the jump to GP 2013 and 2013 R2. There's a lot more out there. Obviously, there's a great blog series that you can hit, new features of the day. If you just type in Dynamics GP features of the day, you'll get a great web series of information that the MVPs from Microsoft have filled out and populated out on the web for you to kind of view on the highlights of what they found as cool features for the upgrade. But other than that, any questions that I can answer for you guys?
Sean?
Yeah.
JC with Southern Illinois Healthcare Foundation.
Yeah.
I have more of a technical type question.
Sure.
Currently, we're running 2010, and if the decision was to go to 2015, what kind of steps would we be looking at? Is this a single, we can go to from 2010 to 2015, or do we have to go 2013, 2015?
I think they have to do it as a two-step tier, but I would want you to talk directly with Mike Sinclair or Mike Shank on that one and have somebody from the development team follow up with you on it.
Okay. And the other question, and this really isn't a technical one, in the 2015, the purchasing part of it, the requisition purchasing, is that part of 2015 or is that a module you have to buy?
No, it is part. As soon as you install it, you have access to it.
Very good. Well, that's all I have.
Perfect. Any other questions, guys?
Bye. I have one more.
Let's see, I've got one here from Crystal real quick. So on the Smartlist Designer, are you able to select fields from more than one module? And the answer is yes on that one, Crystal. It's real quick. So whenever you're in the Smartlist Designer and you're creating a new Smartlist, all of these listed out here on the left-hand side are the different modules that are accessible. And whenever I go into the tables, I could select and say, okay, I want to grab my financials from the list out here, and I want to grab my account master, but I also need to join that. I'm using the account master for the description and such, but I'm linking the account master to, let's say, sales distributions table or something along those lines. So whenever I scroll through here, I look for sales distribution, work and history, and whenever I select that, then I have to select the table relationships that are out here and say, okay, the account master, field name, account index, left join, sales distribution, and where the account index equals the account index. So you have to select and handle the table joins appropriately, but you can select multiple different tables and fields and such to fill those out. And then Nancy, I think I heard a question coming from your side.
Yeah, is there a place like on the internet where we can look to see the difference between 2010 and 2013? We kind of missed the whole step.
There is. I've got some supplemental information that I could pass along to you guys. Okay. I have both systems loaded onto the system, so if you just want a general introduction to that, let me know. Yeah, we could even set up a separate session. But yeah, you can essentially go out and if you hit a web search and just type in differences between 2010 and 2013 Dynamics GP, you should hit a few things, but I'll find some information to pass your way.
Yes, I think we'd be interested in looking at that.
Sounds good. And then I had a question from Jack Berlinski on the number of records, on the maximum rows that can be pasted. I have not tested the full bit, but let's just kind of take this and roll with it. I don't think that there's any limit. I think it's as many as you can possibly do with it, but good challenge. I would be curious to find out that question myself. I haven't seen anything specifically, and I know whenever they did their test with it, they had a spreadsheet filled out with, I think, 150 rows on it whenever they did their copy and paste, because they wanted to show how quickly it could go into place, and it ran pretty well. All right, so other questions? Definitely one of those areas that we could expand further on. Just to kind of give you an idea, this is what I've been working from, and were all the different features, and then I had my specific ones that I was going through. But this is a list of all of the different features that are currently out there, and I would not mind sending this list onto anyone. There's also documents that you can download on the web.
And
Oh, absolutely. Yep, and we'll look for that to be a follow-up out there. Go ahead.
This is Jennifer.
Yeah.
We also have a lot of this information for you all on the Turnkey Technologies website, and I'm happy I can send out a couple direct links to all attendees following today's session.
If you haven't been to our beautiful new website.
And then don't forget, we'll have our user group meeting on June 17th. We'll be back at Microsoft, and we're talking about reporting. So we hope to see you there as well. Yep, and videos, Dynamics GP, or also under products. There's a couple different pages with lots of collateral linked to the different web pages.
Lots of stuff.
We also write a blog a couple times a week, and we've done some blogs on new features in Dynamics GP 2015, so I can send those links out as well.
All right. Well, I appreciate everybody's time. I hope to hear from you again with any further questions, and everybody have a wonderful day. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.